And I was reading the reviews about my talks, and multiple of them were like, okay, I have no idea what Kotlin is, but the speaker has cool cats, which is why I'm always coming. So thanks to Edison and Casper for making Kotlin more popular, I guess. So moving forward to the talk, the agenda will be to define what is a configuration. So like we will try to figure out like not the academical definition of it, but how do we understand it. We will move to the live coding part with the configuration in the code as the most simple solution to the configuration management. Then we will talk about various improvements of that approach, like environment variables, files, and dynamic configuration. There will be more like, as I mentioned, backend oriented, but I feel like some of the approaches are pretty common everywhere. So my first question will be to you, like, what is a configuration for you? So like, can you give me like an example or explain to me, like I'm 5? So like any ideas? Okay, so like, let's say a token to a third-party API, is that a configuration? I think so. So like, is the username of the app owner a configuration? Well, the answer is maybe. So speaking from a more theoretical standpoint, but also like not as strict, a configuration is something that is more or less stable and that helps us to run an application and to achieve some state in it. So for example, a third-party token will be configuration, saying, okay, this feature flag enables us to do something new, is also like the configuration, depending like if it's turned on or not. So yeah, pretty sure that is a configuration. Well, the username, maybe user preference, can be also be defined as such. So it's kind of a rule to achieve some state. Cool, so now when we define the configuration, I decided to go for a real life example. I went through the list of the open APIs, and one of them was simple. Okay, it's more like, okay, it's not simple, actually it's pretty advanced API for retrieving the current weather based on the latitude and longitude with various settings, like if you want to have the historical weather or not. So let's move to IntelliJ, and I'll show you the project that I prepared. So it's quite simple. It has a simple main function, simple client. I added some data classes to deserialize it using Kotlin X serialization, but that's basically it. So the main interesting part of it is this part, so the request. So for the educational purposes, I will say in this request, we have the configuration that is the URL and its parameters. So one may say, okay, it's not really a configuration, but for the educational purposes, it definitely is. So the latitude and longitude is some place in Japan. I think it's Kyoto. And let's try to run it and see if the current setup is working. Yeah, it's pretty much working. So like this is the original response. And in the end, it's parsed. So let me give you a short overview of the parameters. So like the latitude and longitude are like the coordinates, and the current weather is some flag which says, okay, we want to have a weather right now. It's reported once per hour, but the API also provides the historical weather, but we don't want that today. So speaking of the configuration, right now, all of our configs are in the string. And yeah, if I'm doing, for example, a small prototype for backend when I have like, I don't know, an Android or iOS app, and I also want to have some backend service, I'm writing it down, and yeah, it works out of the box just perfectly because, yeah, I'm the single user, I want to prototype something, and that's totally fine. And the one thing that you have to understand, sometimes it's perfectly fine to come up with the simplest, straightforward solutions, but right now it's a string, and well, as a Kotlin developers, we don't want to have all as strings because we want types, otherwise we will use JavaScript. And let's make it more Kotlin-like. We can say, okay, let's extract some variables. So for example, this one will be a URL. This one will be a latitude. This one will be a longitude. And the current weather. Okay, this one extracted on the top level. Maybe it's not worth having it there. Let's move it here. So right now it's working also just fine. Okay, in our current scenario, we don't really benefit from extracting it because we don't use types in it because we cast it back to the strings. However, one can imagine that we want to reuse some of our configuration. So right now we can do it because it's extracted. And also now we have types and we can introduce some additional checks. And since we have like the types defined, we can say, okay, this one definitely will be a Boolean or something, or this will be a number, namely double, as latitude and longitude is. And what I like in Kotlin is, compared to Java, we can have the configuration on the top level. So one may say, okay, we can move our configuration to another file or to the top level of this file. And this will work without any additional class wrappers, without any static magic and such, which is quite nice. So one can say even, we can't move it like that outside, but we could do something like this. Yeah, here IntelliJ will suggest you to make it const. We can also do that. So speaking about configuration, it's always important that as engineers, we are not only solving like the theoretical computer science problems, but also sometimes like the business problems. Because as I mentioned, as an example of the configuration, we can say we can have a third-party token. So like this token will be for some kind of sensitive service that is quite expensive, and it will be suboptimal if we expose this token to someone else. So if I'm working alone, of course, I can still have it here right now, but maybe at some point I want to publish my repository on the GitHub, and then I can say, okay, I can move my changes to the new change list and never publish it to the GitHub, but maybe I'm not working alone. And you know, like we are all people, and the more people we have, the more potentially happy accidents can happen. Yeah, we are all people, and we can leak our tokens or other sensitive data, and that's not great. So as a backend engineer, the typical approach to that problem will be actually storing the configuration as the environment variables. So for example, the current weather, we can modify the configuration. There are multiple ways to pass the environment variables. So one of them will be doing it directly via IntelliJ, I guess. Yeah, Android Studio can do something like that. Also, let's name it current weather. and set it to true. Okay, cool. Instead of having it on the top level, let's read it from our system. Get environment variable, it's uppercase. And here, well, we got some privacy for our environment variable, for our configuration. The problem is we lost the types out of the box. So it's quite simple to cast it back, of course, but yeah, it's quite sad that we should do that. So I'm using Boolean strict to cast it explicitly. True should be true and false should be false without any additional magic. Let's see that it worked. So yeah, everything is still working fine. If it weren't, so like we can check, for example, setting it to, I don't know, to something completely wrong. Yeah, now it's not a Boolean value anymore. So yeah. So right now, when we have the environment variable, and it's just one, it's quite convenient, but sometimes we have like lots of them, and just passing it like that, like a long line of additional parameters when running is not as great. For that, we can have, for example, a separate file that won't work out of the box, but some plugins enable us to use it, called .env. And it looks pretty much the same as, passing it directly. Let's remove it from here and pass it here. So it's like essentially a value key equals value file, and the magic here for IntelliJ at least, it's the env file plugin where we can enable the env file in the menu. So it's like in sources.env. And the environment variables will be read from here. So why this approach is used at all? So like one of them, yeah, if you have multiple environment variables, and another one, there is an option to have multiple environment, so like .env files, one of them the true.env and .env.local, for example, that will be added, for example, to gitignore. In .env, you will have only like the keys without any values or like with dummy values. And in the .env.local, you will have something for the actual development that shouldn't be pushed into your repository. So that's one of the approaches. Let's rename it back to the .env file. And yeah, now when we have it as a separate file, let's take a look at the other options that we have as the developers, as the files, because yeah, it's just a key and the value. Maybe it's not as readable. So the most popular one, maybe, or not, at least one of the most familiar ones is YAML. The problem with YAML is, like, okay, I don't know what why the fonts are broken. I think it's also the YAML problem, but it's really simple, and that's what makes it bad, because it's perceived as simple, but do the engineers actually know the spec of the YAML? So, for example, do you know, so like in Kotlin, there are two valid values for a Boolean, like the true and false. And my question is, how many valid values can a Boolean have in YAML? Any suggestions? Four. Anything? Anyone else?
Maybe three.
Three. More ideas? It's higher. It's higher.
Infinity.
Not infinity. Slightly less, let's say. 8. More, actually more. Not 42, but we're getting close. Okay, the last guess. It's less than 42. 16. Okay, the correct answer is the 22, and plus the nearest answer will get some present from Germany, so it's like a cucumber. And it's actually a wide-known problem called Norway problem, because a lot of engineers are just throwing around the no's, and no is actually a valid Boolean value in the YAML, the first version of YAML. I think this one is still the most prevalent here. So there are various options like true, false in various upper cases and lower cases, yes and no, the Norway problem, on and off, and I think something else, N and Y as the letters. So like, yeah, the problem with YAML is first, like the engineers are overconfident when they're using it because it's like really simple. So like the keys and the values are there. So what could go wrong here? And another one is it's machine readable, but barely human readable and human writable sometimes. Because if you want to introduce another like layer of the indentation, it will likely break because it will still be valid to some degree, and it's so hard to comprehend it sometimes, which is why personally I prefer using JSON. Many people won't agree with me because it feels more like cluttered because it has curly braces, but at least the structure is better defined for me. As a downside for the JSON, you cannot write comments here, but you can do it in JSON 5, which has less quotation marks, and now you can write comments. Sadly, it's not popular at all. I use it in my home project, but yeah, no one else does. Another interesting variation is tonal, which is also a key value, but it has the blocks. For example, here you can see the app, which defines the block. So that way you can achieve some hierarchy and grouping compared to the file that we had before. And the last but not least is the .properties files. So like it looks essentially the same. The .env file, you cannot have any real nesting or hierarchy here. So like the weather.current is not a real hierarchy. It's like just a fake one because it's just the entire key. And one may ask, like, why would you use the properties file in the 2023? Well, at least for the backend, like, Karin, why are you suggesting using that for backend? Like, because it's working out of the box and it's quite stupid and simple. So you can just use it from your Kotlin project and not like not enable any dependencies, nothing. It just works, which is why it's great in its simplicity. Let's try to enable .properties files in our project. So let me shortly switch from the presentation mode, and I prepared, for the sake of time and file, this one I think, a setup for the properties. So here I prepared two files called prod properties and staging properties. So for prod, we have other latitude and longitude right now. I think it's from Norway. And in our environment, as an our environment variable, we will enable the prod one. So here the things are going quite simple if IntelliJ lets me. And let me show you what do I have here. So basically, the properties are initialized like this and just loaded as a stream from file. And how do we decide which file to load? So like, yeah, just reading it from the system environment, quite a typical approach. So we still don't have any types, so we have to cast it. And yeah, let's compare the weather in Kyoto and in Norway. So let's start with the environment dev and run it. So like the weather should be the same as before. So like 25, I guess it's the weather there. And let's roll it back and run it with the prod. So like the weather is +6. That's quite cold. Awesome. So to the last part of the talk, or almost last part of the talk, I think we have some more minutes. I will show you the concept of the dynamic configuration. So under dynamic configuration, we understand loading the configuration from various sources. So basically the idea is now we can define the configuration both from the files and from the environment variables. So for example, as a developer, I want to have a separate configuration just for this exact run. And I can set it, for example, explicitly in my environment variables that, for example, the latitude will be something else right now. So for example, right now I'm in Riga, and just for this week, so I want to have the weather from Riga. And we can organize it, so like the prod properties and staging properties still have the latitude and longitude for Kyoto, and I think from Lonkia, from Norway, and those are the temporary latitude and longitude for Riga. And we can inquire for the weather here. So 25, maybe, I don't know. Cool. So, and that's it for the basic approaches to the configuration management here. So, yeah, I have the slide for the Spring, but basically, yeah, you can have not the environments, but profiles here, but that's not as interesting today. But the most importantly is the points to consider. So first of all, who owns, creates, and changes the configs? If I'm working alone, of course, I don't need to have a proper management configuration system from the very beginning, like no like vaults or something, because otherwise I will spend all my time on configuring that instead of prototyping something actually. So I will, like, if I will do a small project for myself, I will just hardcode them and that's it. That won't definitely work for the bigger team of even 4 or 5 people. You have to deal with it somehow. You have to share them. You have to reuse them occasionally. So you will have a absolutely different approach. So how do you share them and how do you distribute it is another question, because you definitely don't want to publish your super secret token for everyone, because, yeah, for reasons maybe you want to, I won't stop you. Which is why you have to somehow prevent it. And the teamwork, the single source of truth, how fast you can ship the changes, because if you want to make it in 10 minutes, you will likely store them as a plain code or plain text. And always don't forget about sensitive configs and virus contexts, because some data shouldn't be stored, exposed, and some data shouldn't be stored for some exact situations. And that's basically the main points for the configuration management in Kotlin. If you have any questions, I can answer them. Otherwise, this is my cat Edison.
Okay, if you have any questions, please put your hands up and we'll put the microphone. Maybe anything about YAML? Any more fun facts? Okay, I'll give you 3 more seconds to think about your questions. If not, then you can catch Karin in here in the networking space and ask your questions personally. And thank you very much for this fun and engaging presentation. And let's clap again.
Thank you for inviting me today.
Okay, great. Now it's time for a coffee break. We will have it for 15 minutes, right? So let's meet back here at 19:15. Okay. Welcome back, and we will welcome Ivan, who came to us from Norway. We've been hearing a lot about Norway today, so there will be some more. And yep.
Hello. So, I'm so happy to be here. As Karin just showed us, it's really cold in Norway, so I arrived here yesterday, 32 degrees. It was amazing. So, first of all, I just wanted to say I think we should give a round of applause for Chile as well for arranging such a nice event like this. That is amazing. And also, hello to the people at home. Even though you're not here, we can feel your presence. No, we can't. So, I am so happy to be here today. And to be honest, I've been looking so forward to this talk. And the main reason, it's the first time in history that I've been able to talk about a subject that is closest to my heart. That is indie app development. Indie app development is independent app developers building stuff and putting it out in the stores and perhaps earning money from them. So today I will talk about my journey. Now, when I started this talk, I was like, wow, what am I actually going to be supposed to talk about? And then I figured out I've been an app developer for 10 years, and what would I want to know 10 years ago? So today I'm going to share you 10 years of experience in 40, 50 minutes, something like that. I'm gonna hurry. But first, who am I? I love this photo. I use it in all my presentation. I mean, I was pretty cute. What happened? But it's good. I can still look back at these memories, which is pretty fine. As I already mentioned, I'm from Norway, and a city called Bergen. We're famous for one thing, rain. It rains a lot in Bergen. But it's beautiful as well. I'm not sure if this photo is photoshopped or if it's actually not raining, but yeah, it's a beautiful city. You should come there. It's not as beautiful as Riga. I'm part of something I usually call the Nokia generation. I know that there's a lot of young people here, but is there anyone here who has owned any of these phones? Nice! Nice, I'm not the oldest one anymore. So all of these phones are phones that I have owned. So for me to work as an app developer now makes a lot of sense because I've been through all this journey. I mean, like, do you remember the Nokia N-Gage? You would hold it like a sandwich when you were speaking. It looked so stupid, and the games you could play with it was even like worse than the ones on your Game Boy Color. So it was really strange. But yeah, amazing phones. I really miss them sometimes. But I'm also really happy that I don't have them anymore. Nice. As all developers, or the majority of developers, I started my career as a gamer. Anyone remember the name of this game? It's Counter-Strike 1.6. I was really, really bad at it. So I quit, and I started doing stuff on my computer instead. So I think at this time I was doing a lot of Photoshop and playing around with Blender to make 3D models. I think my dream one time was to become a 3D modeler for Pixar. And this is actually when I started in the university. And look closely. It's the phone I showed you a few slides ago. It's there. Not very smart, but it's there. Now, I don't know why, but me and Steve Jobs had the same haircut. I didn't try to make the same haircut as Steve Jobs, but obviously I did. So this was when I started in university. I'm not going to talk a lot about university because that is boring. But I started my first job as an app developer in 2013. I was forced to have a personal computer or a Windows PC. But as you can see, I also hid the MacBook there as well. Mini Mac, or what it's called, Mac Mini. So yeah, this was my first job. 2016, I decided to go try out the startup life. So I created an app called It's Oaked. It's basically Vivino, only for cognac. But I'm going to share a free tip for you today. I'm not going to charge you anything. If you want to make anything for cognac, just remember that the cognac sales are going down, and also that the people that are drinking cognac going up. So there is no market. So we decided to shut down that startup. But it was fun. It was a great experience. Today, I work in a company called Shortcut. I have a team of 11 people in my hometown, Bergen. So obviously not all of them here, but I love working with them. We also have close to 200 people in Europe. But we are a small little family in Bergen, and we really enjoy that. But today, I will be talking about how I built a portfolio of 50 apps in my spare time. So I've had a full-time job all ever since. This is actually a photo of me from Vietnam. I brought my what's it called? A notebook, a moleskin, where I have all my app ideas. Unfortunately, I lost it in my luggage a few years ago, so the person is really lucky because he has a lot of app ideas, but he can probably not build them, so I hope he reaches out soon. Now, for me, app development is like playing the piano. I've been doing it for a decade, and to be honest, when you start playing the piano, it's pretty easy to start playing a melody. And I would say it's pretty easy to get started with app development as well, but it's pretty hard to become really good at it. It takes a lot of time, there's a lot of things to learn. So I cannot play the piano, but I've obviously been doing a lot of app development. But what I saw was that there was so much things to learn. I tried to put a lot of different stuff in here so that everyone would be familiar with something. But I mean, like, when you start being an app developer, there's so many things to learn. And for me, it was a little bit strange, because I knew that if I was supposed to become one of the best app developers in the world, which I probably never will be, I needed to learn a lot of these things, and I really wanted experience with all of them. So what I would typically do was, instead of just playing around with the playground or in my sandbox, I would actually figure out that, hey, I can probably build something with these, and I can put it out there and see if somebody likes it. So that was my mentality from the start. But that also resulted in me building a lot of stupid stuff. So this is probably one of the stupidest things I've ever built. So here there are a lot of technologies involved. I'm using Firebase for this project, or I used Firebase for this project. I use storage for storing the images. But also the main reason why I built this app is probably the stupidest reason ever to build an app. I wanted to build something where I could swipe left and right like the Tinder app. That was the main reason. But that could be like the very, very little reason for me to actually start building something and push it out there. Unfortunately, I received an email from Nintendo, so I removed it from the App Store. Here's another stupid example of some of the things I've built. This is a candy app. It's still in the App Store, but it has very few users. But for me, it was to start playing around with the collection view in iOS development. And to be honest, I was also really admiring how Airbnb was doing filtration. So the filtration I'm doing on the right side was actually the main reason for me building this app. So as you can see, from my point of view, I wanted to learn a skill, and I knew that there was a lot to learn, but I really wanted to build something valuable that I can put out there, and maybe someday it will be something else. So these were two examples of a few stupid apps I've made. So let's talk about the first 3 apps I built. This is back in 2013. The downloads of my apps are on the right side of the names. So I had one app called Above, Know Your Altitude, only available in Norway. So it was the stupidest name to choose, Above, which is in English for a Norwegian audience, but that's a total different story. And also, I wanted to build something that I was really interested as well. So I've always been interested in my weight. I wanted to go down, like the cognac sales. And that also has 531 downloads the first year. I also built a stupid game with the sheep icon, which was a little bit fun. As you can see, they were launched pretty close to each other. So the 1.0 version has like a few days in between. The main reason was that I couldn't afford the App Store Connect a yearly subscription thing, so I didn't have my account in place yet. But they were all released at the same time, and I think that was pretty fun. But out of the 3 apps, you can see that the upper one is the actually one that has a lot of downloads in 1 year. Not a lot, but actually much more than the other ones. So here is the picture of that app. It's super simple. As I mentioned, I knew Photoshop, and you were supposed to know the altitude. Now, in Norway, we like to go hiking. We have a lot of mountains. So this is me and my girlfriend on a mountaintop. And I think that was the main reason why my app got a lot of downloads, because people were interested in knowing how many meters above sea level they were. And the app itself was super simple. but it solved the one problem. You wouldn't even have to press a button. You would just opening it, and it will give you the result. Super simple. Know your altitude. Most simple app out there. Now, today, that app has changed into something a little bit different. It still has the niche. It has an average rating of 4.6, 160K downloads only in Norway, 5.4 million app opens, and $13K in ad revenue. So the only ad I have is the one that is on the bottom there. So it's only shown one time to the user. But it gave me enough to buy some beers and coffee, which was the goal back then. But also I added this feature where you also, instead of just checking the location or the elevation or altitude of where you were, you could also see it in the map. So you could actually browse through the map and see the locations, or the altitude, all the way in Norway. Now, the thing about this app was that this was kind of like my bread and butter for a while. This was the thing that I earned money on. The rest was like people were laughing at them when they tried them. But I was really happy, and I thought, like, maybe this can turn into something else. So the stupidest app I showed you earlier turned into this, and it was earning a lot of money, but not a lot, but money. And I thought, I need to do something else with this. Now, when you have 160,000 Norwegians running around on mountaintops, checking the altitude, you can also collect a really valuable data set of all the mountains in Norway. And that hit me. And then I was thinking, because Pokemon Go was really super interesting, so then I got the idea, how about building like a Pokemon Go version on the mountaintops in Norway? So that's when me and my friend Torkel, he was also in the photo of one of my colleagues in the Bergen office, decided to build something called Fjelltoppjakten. We used a Norwegian name this time, but it's basically collect mountaintops. That's what it means. We have 13,000 mountaintops in that app, 60,000 users, and 1.2 million check-ins. So people has been on 1.2 million mountaintops and checking in my app. I have a little video. I'm going to try see if it works to play it. So yeah, it's Pokemon Go for mountaintops in Norway. It's really popular. We deployed it during the pandemic when we were bored. So we don't know what to do with it anymore because we have so many users reaching out to us every day, but we think still it's fun. But it resulted from that one stupid, simple idea that kind of turned into this. But it also turned into this app, which is basically an expert map tools called TupoMap. So what I saw was that a lot of the users on the Know Your Altitude app would ask me a lot of questions like, hey, we need this tracking feature, we need to add a bookmark in the map, we need to do a lot of stuff. It has 4.8 average rating, 2,800 subscribers, and it has $195,000 in revenue. That's actually a lot. I'm actually surprised when I see it now as well. But it all started from that one single app back in 2013. I'm going to show you my raw numbers as well, because I think they're a little bit funny. So it was released back in 2014, I think. As you can see, there's some small notches there. And then back in 2018, I decided to go for a subscription model for that app. So instead of having like one-time payment in the app, I had actually a recurring revenue, which was really nice. But as you also can see, like, as you also, I believe you are here in Latvia, you also have a winter, and people don't like to go hiking as much in the winter. So that's the reason for all the spikes. It's the summertime. And also in the middle, when we were stuck at home during the pandemic, I also sold a little bit more. But as you can see, this summer was actually pretty nice. And I don't think I've done any changes to that app since 2019. Only updating. So hopefully it will continue this way, and I'll come back next year and tell you that I have doubled the revenue. Let's cross our fingers. But I also had a few other apps, and I've built 50, so I have to show you a few more. As I mentioned, I've always been interested in my weight, but I figured out that tracking my weight wouldn't solve any problem. So that's why I decided to build this calorie tracker. Now, there was a lot of calorie trackers out there, so I could just use one of them. But ironically, I didn't want to pay for the subscription. So that's why I decided to build my own. My biggest challenge back then was that I didn't have any food items. So how can I build a calorie tracker if I don't have any food items? But then it hit me. I'm into the grocery store probably every day. So what I did was that I started building a very simple app that would be able to scan a barcode, and I could register the information on the food item itself. So every day when I went to the grocery store, I would add 30. Quick maths, 10 days, 300 items, 100 days, 3,000 items. And when I was in the store, I was always chasing the ones that were typically for a diet, for people who wanted to lose weight. So I could actually launch it with 3,000 food items, which was really nice. And today, 28,000 food items. I've still only registered 3,000 of them because all my users have registered all the others. 4.6 in average rating, 800 subscribers, and 28K in revenue. So just a small portion based on the one you saw earlier. But the idea is you scan an item and you can track it and you can see the calories you're tracking. The numbers for this one as well. I released it in 2020. It's growing. Now you see the big spike. The reason why there's a big spike is because I changed my payment wall. So just keep that in your mind. Payment walls are important. I'm going to talk more about them, but they can actually do a huge impact on this. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the last app that I have, which is a troublesome app for me. It's probably the app I've spent the most time on. It's a Gym King. It's called Gym King. It's a workout tracker. And I think every indie developer at one time considered making a workout tracker app. Like, I know a lot of them. The thing is that I believe, so I have a 3.8% conversion. And that is that the amount of people, so let's say that 100 people have downloaded my app, only 4 out of them track a workout. So I obviously have a big problem when it comes to the conversion rate for people to actually start using my app. I really believe one of the reasons is that when you're actually looking for a workout tracker, there are so many. So you go in, you download 10 of them, and you delete 9. I think that is how people are using it. But I still have some job to do on this. But for the people that has been using my app, they really like it, so it has a 4.9 average rating. It's actually pretty popular in Latvia. It's free, so I have no revenue on it, or at least it's not much. I'm coming back to this a little bit with a few examples later on as well. I said I had 50 apps. I didn't. Some of them are deleted a long time ago, but this is basically my app store. A lot of them. So, yeah. I would probably be a very good piano player if I spent 10 years playing piano instead of doing app development in my spare time. But you're not here to listen to me talking about my apps, right? You're here to get my experience. So, 31 things I wish I knew 10 years ago. This is going to be super fast because it's 31 things. So, I mean, it's going to be on YouTube as well. So if you're stressed about it and you feel like it's going too fast, you can always go into, is it on Chili Labs on YouTube? You can find the whole presentation as well. So I'm going to take a deep breath before I jump into this. Let me start with a question first, though. Anyone here, an indie developer, having an app in the App Store or Google Play? Nice. Okay, so who here wants to have an app in the App Store or Google Play in the future? Oh, there's a lot of people I have to convince, but I'll do it. So, first off, start by solving your own problem. And this is something that everyone would tell you. But the value of having direct knowledge of the problem is actually priceless. And it's also really motivating. For me, for instance, if I want to lose weight, to build a calorie tracker is actually really, really nice. It's actually one of the funniest things I've done. And also for the workout tracker that I built. So I'm not sure what my next thing will be, but obviously it's going to be something cool. Maybe I should start playing the piano. Maybe create an app for that as well. Second, spotting potential. I know it's really hard to find an idea and what to build, but there's so many apps out there, and I really recommend you to just look through the App Store, look for apps that are doing fairly well, and see, like, is this something I could build a little bit better? Is that a chance that you can do that? And also take a look at the reviews. See what people are complaining about. Can you learn from that experience and start building something on the side that is like a little bit better based on what people don't like about the app? And also, I built a calorie tracker, but there were so many other calorie trackers out there, but I knew I only needed 1% of their users to succeed. 1% of another competitor's user would be 100 or 10,000 users for me, and that will be enough for me to be happy. So also look for that as well. And this is my favorite. Experiment by combining ideas. If we go back in time, let's say for the last decade, it's really hard to not mention Uber or Airbnb if you talk about the most innovative products. But if you look at it, Uber is basically taxi and a private person. Airbnb is basically hotel and a private person. Now it has become much more, but it started by combining stuff. So for instance, you know that I have this workout tracker. Maybe I could do something with AI. I have all the data. The user is registering all the data in my app. Maybe I can build an AI personal trainer, and the user can decide, I want him to be strict, I want her to be funny, or whatever, and then you can build some feedback in the app based on that. So just look at like things you can combine. I think that's a very good place to start. And look through the list on App Store as well. I saw that you had a lot of different apps in Latvia that I have never seen in Norway, so I got a little bit inspired when I saw that. This is also a tip. Join the App Store Small Business Program. They have an equivalent for the Android version as well, but if you join this program, you get a reduced commission rate of 15% of paid apps and in-app purchases. In-app purchases also is subscriptions. So that means actually you get 15% more money from Apple. And the same goes for Google. Now, this is only valid if you earn less than, is it 1 million euros, I think? So, yeah, good luck. Practice your elevator pitch. Simplicity, craft clear product explanations. I love this example. I use it whenever I'm supposed to explain any of my apps. You know, the altitude thing that I did, know your altitude, was inspired by this. Steve Jobs said, 1,000 songs in your pocket. He could have said it in 2 minutes, explaining everything, but 1,000 songs in your pocket is really beautiful. But I think it's really important to practice it as well, because when you found this idea and you started working on it, it's very easy to start talking about the features as well. But it's just like great mindset. Keep this as an example and just figure out, like, you can even ask, like, ChatGPT, please, this is my app description, make it very small. I've gotten a few results from there as well. Simplicity. An app doesn't need a user manual. If it needs a user manual, you did something really, really bad. A good app is easy to understand. This is an example. I took this photo. It's at Stanford University in Palo Alto. It's one of the most important universities, most like known universities in our time. And this is the parking machine at the parking lot. So there's instructions in top. There's instructions left to the big keyboard. There's a lot of information. It has a tape over the coin slot, which has cards only. And there's also this extend by phone icon. Extend by phone. It doesn't even say how, but it has instructions for all the other. It's really, really confusing. It ended up in me having a parking ticket, but I had enough money to pay for it, happily, luckily. And this one of my favorite slides, choosing the right technology. There is no such thing as a right technology. Have you ever heard a user say something like this? Oh my God, shit, this app is so nice. It has Swift UI, it uses Combine, it's even built with MVVM architecture. This really solves my problem to perfection. I mean, your users doesn't even care if it's Flutter, if it's React Native, maybe they care if it's React Native because of performance, but at least it doesn't really matter. One of the things that I would suggest, though, is to use Firebase. I've been using Firebase, and as an indie developer, it's super efficient for me to deploy things really fast. And it also scales, and it's fairly cheap as well, unless you have like millions of users, of course. This is my hottest tip. as an indie developer, build the right thing first, then build it right. It's really important. No, you don't need dark mode support for the first version of your product. Apple Watch support, relax. We're gonna get there when we get enough users. Just make sure you build something that people really enjoy. And also, one of the things that I see in a lot of indie developers as well, some of you, me, we are not designers, so we should trust in Apple human interface guidelines and material design, or for instance, Flutter components that are already there. We don't have to do it all over again. And also remember that these frameworks are built by hundreds of great designers. It's really great to keep in mind. Photos, it's a great way to make your app stand out, even with a simple UI. So every time I'm hiking with my girlfriend, I force her to take a lot of photos so I can use them in my app. This is an example. But I use alternatives for photos in my apps. I tend to use Pexels and Unsplash a lot. They're like stock photo websites. But I also been playing around a little bit with Midjourney as well. So a simple photo can actually do wonders for your app if you're not comfortable with being a designer yourself. At least when you want it to stand out. And this is one of the most things that I've been very this surprises me every time I see a new app. But dynamic content design, make all your views scrollable. Don't force them to be one height, because then you have to adjust them for all the screens. You're just making it harder for yourself. And I promise you, your user experience won't be any better by doing it as well. If you have a professional designer, maybe you can. But it's much more easy when you have everything in scrolls, because then you don't have to overcomplicate constraints and sizing. It's just like, I've been doing this, I think every app I have has scrollable views. It's either like a table view, collection view, or something else that is scrollable, because it makes it much more easier to get something out there. And this is also a thing that I've seen a couple of times. I say, design your app for premium. And the reason why I do this is because I see a lot of indie developers, they build a lot of heavy apps, and then they have this subscription upgrade thing where there's a lot of hidden features that are impossible to find if you don't know where to find them, because they're hidden, right? They should always be available for the premium users. But design your app as it was for a premium and add locks or blurred views on top, because these also work as advertisement for your app and to upgrade them. So for the people to actually see what they will get is actually a really nice way to actually advertise them to be able to upgrade. So for instance, this is my calorie tracker. I'm adding locks on the different nutrition so that I understand that they actually have to upgrade to see that in nutrition. It's super simple. They know what they'll get. They know how to trigger it because they try to press on it. And the same goes with the graphs I've shown here on the left side. Just a very simple thing. I have a friend. He has been building a habit tracker app for, I think, 2 years. And when I ask him, why haven't you put your app into the App Store? He says, I miss an app icon. And I'm staring at him like, I can make an app icon for you if you get the app out. I promise I'll make it for free. It's really important, don't overcomplicate it. Use 2 layers. As you see all of these, it's an icon and it's a background. It's very simple. It's even like a K with a background on it. I don't say that my app icons are perfect, but at least I didn't spend 3 weeks making it. So it's just that don't spend much time on it, but make something that stands out. That's why I'm using pink and green as colors as well. My favorite quote when it comes to app development is this: if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you launch too late. It's Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn. Now, this doesn't mean that your app is supposed to look ugly. But again, do you need dark mode? Maybe not. Now, today, it's easier to build dark mode than to build without it. But yeah, it's not necessarily like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it needs to solve the problem. You need to know if it's the right thing to build, then you can build it right. But now, it's time to launch. And I've said this because I've launched many apps that I just put in there, and then I close my eyes and I forget about them, and I go back and I see, oh, 2 downloads. One is myself and the other one is my girlfriend. So it's really important that you get your first 1,000 users as fast as possible and to get their feedback. Because now you're in a mode where you want to understand, did I build the right thing? So I'm going to go show you a few examples on how you can get those first 1,000 users. First of all, I would say spend 1 hour learning App Store optimization. It's mostly the same for Android and Google Play and App Store. But I would say 1 hour, you can find videos on YouTube, you can find articles here and there. It's super easy. ASO is really not rocket science, but the value is priceless. Spend 1 hour, maybe 2 if you want to go really dig deep into it. And also there is one hidden thing. I haven't found any information about this yet, but I heard it I don't remember where. In a lot of countries, let's say for instance the US, they have a lot of languages. They have Portuguese, Spanish, they have English, they have, I don't remember, I think they have French as well as one of the languages in the App Store. So use the keywords well, localize your app, and you'll have many more keywords to play with. I think that's really important as well. Here in Latvia, the main language, do you know what the main language here in Latvia is? When you go in to search for an app in the App Store? English, yeah, exactly, English. But you don't have a secondary language, which was a little bit surprising to me. Okay, here comes the tip. This tip is crazy. I've said it a lot of times to people, but people don't listen because they really don't believe me. So I have proof with me today. This is insane. Soft launch your app as a paid app. Put the price whatever you want. Put it really high if you want to. You can get your first 1,000 users in a blink if you do this. The reason is that if you launch your app as a paid app, and then you wait for a few days, and then you set it to free, there's a lot of magazines, websites out there tracking this automatically, creating content about it, saying like, hey, this app is now for free for a limited time. I did this with my Gym King workout tracker. As you can see, 10,000 downloads the first week. And this was the article. Wurstvetta, Gym King, Get Filter, and other apps to check out this weekend. Going from paid to free. I've done this several times as well. But it's a great way to get your first 10 users and to get some feedback. Really great way to do it. Launch your app on Product Hunt. This is a little bit strange because I told you also, if you're not embarrassed by the first version and so on, but at the same time, spend a little bit time, launch your app on Product Hunt. It doesn't mean you will get instantly success, but it's free marketing and it has endless possibilities. Because I've also experienced that a lot of people that are writing content where they recommend new software here and there, they use Product Hunt as a source as well. So it probably takes like 1 hour to create some content there, and I really say that you really need to do that. App Store marketing tools. These are also pretty hidden, but it's a free service from Apple. Just Google App Store marketing tools, and you can just log into your account, and you can create these, I wouldn't say very beautiful, but they're decent. So if you're not a designer and you want something you can put on, like for instance, your Instagram story or your Snapchat story or also an image, you can create it here for free, and you can get them in different colors. You can even choose the language for them. It's a really great way if you just want to like share it with someone or put it on your Facebook page or whatever, but it's free and it's super easy. You don't have to do anything else and log into your account. 20. Apple search ads. If you didn't get your 1,000 users from the trick I showed you earlier, remember that you also get the promo of $100 from Apple search ads. So this is, if you didn't get 1,000 downloads, you'll probably get them from here instead. This is a place where you can actually get more visible in the App Store, so when people are searching for something like your app, it will be on the top. It's really great, and I really recommend you spending those $100. By the way, dollars, the first dollar is the most important, because it is the ability to receive payments, and that marks an important milestone. Because then you get your first dollars, you have everything in place, now you can start building and you know how to do it. It's really important. And remember, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. Go back to the piano thing again. Whenever people are talking about app development, when I have friends, when I have students, when I have younger people in my family who wants to start building apps, they think they will get rich in 2 years. But I tell them, if you want to live out of this, if you want to do it, you have all the time in the world. spend 10 years like I've done. I'm not saying that I'm super successful in anything, but I'm actually closer to switching over to playing piano now than I was previously. This is also a great tip. This is a recent change in the App Store and Google Play. Donations and tip. This was previously not allowed in the App Store and the Google Play. But now they did it. So this is from the payment agreement from Apple, where it says apps may use in-app purchase currencies to enable customer to tip the developer or digital content providers in the app. So this is my Gym King, my workout tracker. So what I did was, hey, donate me a coffee, or I played around with the gym theme, so I said donate me a protein bar and donate a dinner. And also I added this one, support me for free. Review the app, share with a friend. Now, based on this, I would say I haven't gotten like a lot of money from people, but I've had over 10 people donating on each of the different categories. Now, the most used categories is actually a dinner. And that makes me also really appreciative to the users that I have. And that also reminds me that I can actually do something with this app because people enjoy it. Another trick that I really love is to experiment with the price model. This is the payment wall in the app I'm earning the most from. Now, as you can see, there is no pricing. And there is one reason for that. Because I didn't know what the price should be. I didn't have a clue. Could be €1, I would be happy. So what I did was that I set up this thing where people would answer, yes, I want to upgrade, or I don't want to upgrade. So if they would press, I want to upgrade, I knew they wanted those functionalities. But if on the next step they would decline and go back again, I knew they weren't satisfied with the price. It makes sense, right? Not 100% certain, but I had like some sort of opinion on it. So that means if the user didn't want to pay that price, I could send them an offer at a later point. I could reduce the price for a month, and I can inform them about it through push notifications, for instance. It's just a way to play around with it, because you really don't know, and it's really hard as an indie developer to also tell. Feedback is really important. Request feedback from your users. This is from my calorie tracker. So I'm saying basically, are you missing something in the app? And then I present myself, and I have this one button which points directly to a Google form. It took me 45 minutes to make this screen. But the thing that I get back is 118 replies, and as you can see, they're putting them, so I'm asking, how well do you like calorie tracker app, my calorie tracker app? And as you can see, it's so valuable to get those 4 and 3s, because those are people that really enjoy my app, but they really think it can become better. So all the other questions in my Google form is like, how can it be better? What do you dislike about my app? And that information is just super valuable. So I collected this data during the summer, so I obviously have a lot of things to do. But luckily for me, it's 6 degrees in Bergen, so I'll probably have time to sit in and do something this autumn. Request App Store review, but make sure you ask at the right time. This is probably the most obvious one on my list of tips, but this is really impacting your ASO as well. So make sure when people are downloading the app, ask them to rate you, because it's just really important. Even though if they give you a 3-star, it's really important. But also, these people are out there. I don't like paid apps at all. I don't like to see or support paid apps at all. SnakeBiteX009, if you're out there, I'm happy I could use you here. A 1-star review doesn't mean your app is crap. It's just not for them. You're making something for yourself that you want others to use as well. But remember to reply to every review. That's really, really important. Because I also say that it's actually when people are giving you a 3-star and they say like, yeah, this is okay, but it's missing this. It's actually an invitation for you as an indie developer to say, but hey, Mike, I'm actually building a lot of stuff right now. This is the roadmap. I'm building this, I'm building this, I'm building this. It's probably here in like August 2025. But you have the opportunity to actually say to your users that you're going to do something. And people read those. They actually look for the bad ratings whenever they're looking for apps. At least I do. I put this tip here for fun. Spend 1 week in an Airstream in the middle of the desert in Palm Springs, California. I think the dream of every indie app developer is to somehow become free of having a full-time job and then be able to like travel the world or play the piano or whatever. But I would also say that when you're in the beginner phase and you earn some money, make sure you save them. Save enough money to be able to go for a week, for instance, in an Airstream in the middle of the desert in Palm Springs. I did that. I lived in that Airstream and I developed an app while I was there. It was a great experience. It's one of the funniest weeks I've had. Drank a lot of beer as well. But I enjoyed it, and it gave me like sort of feeling that I had this thing going on with my apps. So I spent all the money I'd earned at that time. And when you're really proud of your app, when you've gotten like the feedback, you've changed everything, you've built the app of your dreams, and people are happy about it, request a feature from Apple. I'm not there yet. I've not requested a feature from Apple yet, so I'm waiting to do so. But I've heard a lot of indie developers, whenever they get featured by Apple, they can have like 1 million downloads in a day. So make sure you do that. And I mean, Apple is providing this all the time. I don't think it has the same impact as it has had a few years ago, but it's still really, really important. And also, clean up your information diet. We tend to be a little bit like suspicious about what we put in our body, but when it comes to like our information diet, it's something else. So people spend way too much time on TikTok, Instagram, stuff that doesn't make sense at all. I'm guilty as hell. But I wanted to show you this photo of this guy. His name is Ivars. He's from Latvia. He's doing YouTube, he's doing Twitter, he's doing Instagram, he has a newsletter, he's doing everything. He is an indie app developer living here in Latvia, and he's sharing his life on YouTube. And I haven't told Ivars yet, but the previous app that I built, I had all of his videos on YouTube in the background while I was doing it, and it was actually pretty motivating as well. He's a really calm and nice guy. I love him. Also, the Indie Hacker podcast. Indie Hacker is actually a community where you can actually write and post and things. I'm not that type of guy, but I love to listen to their podcast. It's really, really nice. And also the hashtag build in public is really nice. I use that on Twitter, or sorry, it's not Twitter anymore, it's X now. I use that a lot, and I meet a lot of people there as well. There was actually one guy in the audience today saying hello to me. We met on Twitter, which is really, really nice. X, met on X. And there's also the App Masters podcast and also YouTube channel with Steve P. Young. He has a lot of content around payment walls and conversions and stuff like that. So if you're into ASO, make sure you check out him as well. One final word, tip number 31. You don't need more time, you just need to decide. I built my app the first month I started app development, so can you. This is a quote by Seth Godin. I really love it. It's one of my favorite quotes. And by that, I say thank you. And to be honest, I'm here with a lot of other app developers, and I would love to connect with every one of you because you share the same thing that I do, and that is we want to build apps, which is great. I also want to mention the lowest URL there. It's a fellow indie developer. His name is Adam. He created this app gallery where you can also showcase your apps for free as well. So make sure you check that out. And by that, I say good luck, and I hope to see you on either of these channels. Thank you.
So before you start running back home to develop your apps, maybe some questions to Ivan?
Okay. Thank you for the presentation, especially the part that if you want to go to Norway, that 13K is enough to get you some beers and some dinners. Gives a perspective. Probably California is cheaper. What I was when I was kind of looking through and I was thinking like, what is let's say what you say is a bigger challenge, kind of pushing out the first application and then dealing with the feedback with the users, everything, or let's say if I have 3 ideas, I just throw them out, see which one goes, but then I have to, let's say, 3 communication kind of flows to deal with, and you have 50. Like, how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, very good question. As I mentioned, I've built 50. I removed a lot of them because some of them were like Pokemon Go, no, Pokemon Pokedex thing or whatever. I released a lot of apps that I didn't think had a future in the App Store as well. I think like the biggest challenge is always the marketing part. Obviously, it's the marketing part because as a developer, it's not something that you're kind of used to either way. And I also think like if you're a developer like me, having a full inbox every day is probably like the worst part of my life. But I set out 1 hour every day to like do the emails and support and everything, but that is like the worst part of it. But you can, like if you really want to stay anonymous, you can achieve that as well. So for a lot of the apps that I've built, they don't have a login. They're offline. They're dependent on, for instance, core data on iOS or Room on Android, or actually Firestore also has this Firebase also has this anonymous sign-in, where you also can cache everything in the Firestore database as well. So there's a combination, like you don't need to like build things that necessarily need the customer support and everything. So that's probably the hardest part. But I would say I could probably delete the majority of my apps today and focus on just a few of them. But the one I still have there is the app that I really think has a potential in the future. It just needs my time. But I cannot afford to have that time right now because I have all of the other apps and I have my full-time job as well. And I'm here speaking as well, so I could spend my time building apps right now. I'm just joking, but a really good question.
Artur.
Hi, great talk. Are you reusing some components across your apps? Like, for example, if you've built settings screen, would you use the same in your next app to save up some time?
That's a really, really good question as well. I didn't cover that at all in my presentation. I didn't think about it, but yes, if I have a sign-in, for instance, it's the same code base. Like, I use it. So whenever I'm building something, I try to make it as reusable as possible. So for instance, I have this thing where whenever there's a new update in my app, I have this what's new screen. It's also basically the exact same code. And as you saw from my map apps, they're also using a lot of the same logic in the apps as well. So I've had this on my bucket list for a long time. I'm supposed to build a Flutter app, but it takes me so much more time because I can reuse so much from my previous project that it's a threshold for me. But it's a really good question. Yes, I have a lot of reusable components.
Any more questions?
Did you do the backend as well, or are you using just Firebase all the time?
I'm using Firebase mostly all the time. I have done a few small APIs in Heroku once. I've also done something like, for instance, Firebase didn't have support for Elasticsearch, so I also built something following a guide. I'm not a backend developer. I'm more like a designer and a front-end developer, like an app developer, than I am a backend developer. But I really enjoy Firebase. So the majority is Firebase. I've done a few tricks here and there on other stuff, but it's not something that I really do.
I want to chip in. There's Firebase extensions now that also support, I believe, Elasticsearch and many more things, which eliminate the backend like mostly completely.
That's totally true. Firebase extensions is also amazing. I figured out that there is this thumbnail extension for Firebase storage as well. So now I'm actually halved my budget on the storage as well because I had the thumbnail functionality in place. So that's also really nice. We have a question in the back. We have two, actually.
Norway is famous about the high taxes. So are you taxated in Norway, or you have built your own company for receiving money somewhere out on Cayman Islands?
Yeah.
I'm not asking you personally, but just what you would suggest.
It's a really good question as well. So I'm actually considering moving to Riga. So if you can talk about like the taxes and everything later on here in Latvia, I would love to hear that. No, I mean, I have my company in Norway right now. I used to have it as a sole developer thing where I had them directly to my bank account, which was the worst because then I had to pay taxes before everything, which was horrible. But I do have them in my company right now. Yes, I do. I guess if I were to withdraw the money, I would pay close to 50% tax. So, yeah, it's...
entity is better than doing it in private.
Yeah, I would say so. At least in Norway, it is so. Because now when I have it in my company, I can buy, for instance, a new computer, and I don't have to pay taxes for it beforehand. I could probably do that on my sole part as well, but I think it's much easier on the company. Yeah. But I recently did that change, so now and it's actually pretty fun, because now when I'm earning money from the App Store, I'm also investing into the Apple stock, which went really good after the Apple Vision Pro. So yeah, it's fun. It's like a circle of economy going around. We did have one there as well, I think. Oh, you had the same question. Okay. I know that Bali actually reduced, so you don't have to pay taxes for 3 years or something. But yeah, I have to convince my girlfriend. Not sure if I can do so. Anyone else with questions? I love questions.
What is the meaning of life?
Building apps. I don't know anything else. I've done so for a decade. I don't know anything else. Meeting people, fellow enthusiasts.
Also from your experience, if you had to do let's say, if there is a situation of a blind guess for getting, let's say, the first user feedback and getting a feel like how people are actually using the stuff, would you go with the paywall up front, even with some $1 pricing, or you would go, let's say we start with the free version and then we do the upgrade?
That's a really good question as well. I mean, this is something that is discussed really much in the developer community. So I've seen that a lot of people are now actually showing the paywall as the first thing you see, even before you sign up as a user. And it kind of makes sense as well, because when you download the app, you've already taken a decision that this is an app I'm going to try. So you're already like convinced in a way. So why wouldn't you upgrade at the same time? If the price is very steep, you might not do it. But I haven't tried this on any of my apps yet, but I'm building one now. The test flight for my app is actually available on my Twitter account, so if you want to test it, it's a very boring map app. But I'm actually playing around with this stuff now, where I'm actually showing the paywall as early as possible, even before you sign up as a user. So, I mean, there's a lot of... people are experimenting a lot. The guy I said, Steve P. Young from App Masters, he's playing around with this all the time. He's doing like podcasts every now and then. I also think the Crotchet app in Chile, they're doing that as well. So you can probably ask some of them of their experience by doing it, because they ask in the beginning. I don't think it's allowed to force them to upgrade or start the trial period, because I do think you need a dismiss button up in the right corner or something else. Can you force them? Yes. Okay. Obviously, then you can't force them. So if you're forcing them, I would say start with a trial period, because then they can actually try it out as well if they're unsecure. But that is, people probably have different opinions of that.
As you have so many apps, did you try cross-promotion, and how it went for you?
Oh, you have to define cross-promotion for me, I think.
It's like you have a link to your other apps inside your most popular apps.
Yes, yes. So the Know Your Altitude app, I have this thing, because a lot of the users using that app was asking like, oh, I need an app to track like my tracks and to add points in the map and everything like that. So for a while I actually had, do you want more features? Click here, you'll be sent to the App Store for the other app. So I've done that. I would say for that app it worked pretty nice, because they're so close. I could probably build those features in that app, but I wanted to have it as clean as possible, because I had a lot of users on it and people tend to enjoy it as well. It was so simple, so I really wanted to make the additional app. That transition went really good, so that worked out really well. The same went for the other, which was the Pokemon Go check-in on mountains. I also used it for that one as well. And I'm sometimes playing back and forth with like a link back and forth to all my map apps. I know that there is this framework you can use, which is sort of like an indie app developer advertisement framework that you can put into your app. That means every other indie app developer that is using that framework will also advertise your app while you're also advertising their app. I don't know the name of the framework because I haven't tried it, but it's out there on Twitter as well. I've seen it a couple of times.
It's like a review exchange service. But how do you advertise in other apps? Is it like full screen, or you don't know?
Oh, like that was the question. Like The only one I have in the Know Your Altitude is the small banner one on the bottom. But I have played around with like full video ads as well. People in Norway tend to not like them, so I haven't like been forcing them to do so. But if there are functionalities in my app, for instance, one of the app I had the opportunity to download maps that would take probably like 3 to 5 minutes, depending on the size of the map. And then I said, click here to see an ad while you wait. And that worked out pretty well because you earn a lot of money on them. But I don't think like, I haven't tried pushing them on people. Like for instance, my workout tracker app, I'm not sure if that would succeed on that one, for instance. Like if you're in the gym lifting and then there's this advertisement, there's a chance you might upgrade when you see it, but I haven't played around with it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? Okay, no, that has been a lot. So if you have more, then you can also catch Ivan in the networking space. And thank you very much. This was super, super insightful. I'm sure that everyone is inspired to make their own apps now. Let's give a round of applause. Okay, great. And I have a couple of last words before we will let you go. Next Mobile Developers Latvia Meetup will be in October, and we already have one speaker, an amazing Flutter developer, Sasha Denisov, so make sure to be here. And we're looking for another speaker, preferably someone from Riga or Latvia in general, so if that's you, then give me a message and we can talk about it. And if you enjoyed the meetup, or if you didn't enjoy the meetup and you have feedback for us, please fill in the form. It's really fast, just a couple of questions. Yeah, I hope to see a lot of you doing screenshots right now, opening the QR code. So, yeah, please do that. Yes. Okay, with that, I also want to say thank you for being such a great audience, for participating in our meetup, and thank you to the whole Chile team for organization. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah, we still have 40 minutes for networking, so feel free to grab some drinks if there are any left.